Alex, today I am wearing blue. You are also wearing blue.
Yeah, this is the first shirt on top of the drawer I wore to work.
You know what blue represents in the modern world? Boys.
Yeah.
And Alex, what does that mean for us?
That means that, so a little while ago, I announced that my wife and I are having a child. Well, we found out yesterday, we did the whole gender reveal thing. It is a boy. So very
Smoke
excited.
bombs blew up, action everywhere.
It was incredible, and I know everyone's very happy. It was quite the mixed signals. You know, a lot of families like, oh, it's a girl. The others are like, oh, it's a boy. I was like, I just want a healthy kid. That's all I cared about. But I wasn't going to complain either way. Excuse me, ma'am.
That's
my dog.
Carmela
I
in the
apologize.
background.
Yes, that is my dog in the background. She's just saying hi to everyone. And before we continue on our blue discussion, welcome everyone to Life the Complete Story. I am Alex, and that is Tyler. We are your hosts. And Tyler, if you want to carry us right into typically our first segment of every week, a little nature in the news, and what this has to do with being blue as well. We didn't even plan this.
So today's nature of the news is also involves blue. And as the great Randy Feltface said, blue is not a natural color in nature.
And we're talking like 7-Eleven slushy, like bright, like very bright blue.
Yeah. So recently there's an article published in the National Geographic magazine about and on their website about wild pigs turning blue in California. So basically how this happens, and it's not just like a natural blue, it is like a very electric, slushy, blue raspberry blue.
Let me see if I can pull up this image without getting us in trouble. Let me just zoom way in, so that way it's hard to tell exactly what it is.
Yeah, there you go. So
there you go.
This isn't the first time
blue
this has happened. This is an old story, but it kind of like died out for a little bit. But recently, I'm not sure what they don't really tell what he is in the article, but his name's Dan Burton in the article. He cuts open a pig this past February, so February 2025, a feral hog in California, cuts it open, sees that vivid blue color as Alex showed in the picture. And this comes from the blue dye of rodent poison, specifically in the rodent bait with
diphacinone.
Diphacinone. So this is a anticoagulant that occurs in these poisons, and basically what it does is it stops blood from clotting. Correct?
Yeah, that's what an anticoagulant would. It basically causes, pretty much in the sense of like rodent poison, it basically just causes them to bleed out because that, like, any little bit of damage, or even it's probably to the point where like from like their mucous membranes, they just start bleeding.
So California doesn't have a ban outright on diphacinone, but it does restrict it pretty heavily, and it's California, so they restrict a lot of things. But so it does still show up in a lot of animals that's not supposed to, including condors, bears, bobcats, and even these pigs.
And a little background, like, these feral pigs are invasive. They're like pigs that escaped farms and have become wild, and they are incredibly destructive. I don't know if I talked about them or not.
I don't think so, but we have plenty of time.
But they're incredibly destructive. They reproduce at an alarming rate, and they eat everything. And they've done millions of dollars in crop damage. They're so bad to the point where in states like Texas, you can actually take a helicopter ride and hunt them with like automatic firearms, because they are just that much of a problem. Like, hunting them for sport is not enough to control them. Like, just hunt in like ridiculous manner is basically the only way you can even consider maybe getting a hold of them. And they're still pigs, so you can still eat the meat. It's just they reproduce so quickly and have so many babies.
Not the blue meat. Don't eat the blue meat.
Don't eat the blue meat, which is what we're kind of talking about.
Yeah. So Burton owns Urban Trapping Wildlife Control. That is his company. And he was doing kind of like a stakeout at this California ranch where he'd see these invasive pigs kind of trotting from the banks of the river all the way up to like the ranch that he was staking out, and kind of scrounging around these squirrel bait stations that had the diphacinone bait within it. They'd eat that squirrel bait. It was and then it would bioaccumulate within them to the point where it was affecting them. So, like in a rat-sized dose of difascinone, it doesn't mean much to larger mammals like us or hogs or even bears. But it's kind of like mercury or DDT, where it'll bioaccumulate and biomagnify. For a bear per se, that's when biomagnification comes in. But for a hog who's eating the same bait, it's bioaccumulation. So they just eat enough of it that it accumulates, that difascinone accumulates enough in their system to be lethal. But in a carnivore, they eat the smaller things that were eating the difascinone, and it biomagnifies within them. Anything else to add, Alex?
Not off the top of my head. It's just, I mean, it's one of those that it'd be different if it wasn't escaping its intended use, and that's the real concern, is that it has escaped what it's intended to do as far as controlling rodents, especially like if you're somewhere like in a big city where you get like rats, and they, as much as yes, they are another animal, they also are a public health concern because rats and mice in these areas, in these very populated areas, carry a lot of disease, which is why they put out the blocks or the pellets of poison for them. But with that, the fact of the matter is that they go somewhere else and die. They don't usually die right where the poison, where the bait is located. And because of that, other things start eating them. And then it, like they said in the article, it accumulates in things like birds of prey, or even actually more likely scavengers like the condor, which is mentioned in the article, or a thing like bear or other smaller predators. And it eventually can make them very sick or even kill them if it's not controlled.
Another issue that comes up is the simple answer is not just switching to a different pesticide, because you just open up a new can of worms with that one. So we need to solve the anticoagulant problem with the difascinone before we start a new problem.
Yes,
But that's going to do it. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, using like this, like the rodent side baits is for especially large infestations, is what people really like to use, because it's a lot more efficient and it's cleaner than like traps, because you don't have to pick up a trap and throw it away and potentially expose yourself to any diseases or whatever's on the rodents.
Yeah, that's all we have for today's Nature in the News. That'll throw us into our lesson for today. And to keep it on the blue theme, we're going to dive into the deep blue ocean again for Polymixiforms and Baryceforms. We'll start with Polymixiforms. It's going to be the smaller group for today. It is a single extant genus,
known as the beardfish.
Yes, they are known as Polymia or the beardfish. Although there's a lot of extinct groups throughout history. They are a deep sea fish, typically living on that continental shelf or slope of depths up to 2,600 feet. They're found in the tropical and subtropical regions of the Atlantic, Indian, and West Pacific. Most species are relatively small, although the largest species is Polymixia burnti, reaching 16 inches, and I'd assume that's kind of what Alex pulled up here. I'm not quite sure.
I'm gonna guess so.
Because it looks rather large, although it could have been just magnified.
That looks very much like some of the drawn images. That looks pretty much what it is.
Okay, so
probably just looks a little different because it's probably like a fish that's been caught and is part of some sort of collection, like museum collection.
So since there's so many of these extinct families and genera within the group, the modern day Polymixiforms are considered to be living fossils.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. That'll move us into our second order for the day.
Yes, so our second order today is the Baryceforms, however you want to say it.
Sounds about right.
If this wants to cooperate, I have a picture. So these, relatively large, but not well understood order within the rayfin fish, consisting of about 160 species in 30 genera under 9 families. So that's a pretty significant amount of fish. Are Not well known because they are nocturnal and, like Tyler said, have that very deep sea habitat where it's hard to go down and study them. They do live in tropical to temperate waters along the continental shelf, all the way down to as deep as 6,600 feet, so well over a mile deep. They have slightly compressed bodies. They do have very large eyes, as you can see in the picture, to help them see in that deep water where light does not very easily get. They have a range of colors, reds and yellows to browns and blacks. And they grow up to about 2 feet, so they can get relatively large, but not as large as some of the other pelagic fish that we've talked about. And some of them are caught commercially, included the Aldocino and splendid Alfonsino. And that will take us into some of our families. Yes,
Yes.
our first family. Tyler, if you want to take us away.
Yeah, so our first family is going to be Holocentridae. They are the lone family in the suborder Holocentroidae. Their members are known as squirrelfish or soldierfish, depending on the subfamily. They are found in the tropics of the Indian, Pacific, and Atlantic Oceans, with the greatest richness of those species coming in the reefs in and around the Indo-Pacific. Most are found from the shorelines to about 100 meters deep. Pretty coastal species, but some can be found relatively deeper. They have those large eyes because of that nocturnal nature, and during the days they like to hide in caves, crevices, and under these shelves. Some members have preopercular spines. Those would be spines that occur right before the gill slits. Not really visible in this image, although they are venomous and can cause painful wounds for humans. So it's not a lethal dose for a human, but they are indeed venomous.
Yeah, it's probably quite painful.
Yeah. And most grow to about 6 to 14 inches, but the largest members can grow to nearly 20 inches and the smallest down to 3 inches in length. The squirrelfish tend to feed on smaller fish and invertebrates, while the soldierfish tend to feed primarily on zooplankton.
Ooh. Well, that will take us into our next family, which is the family Barycidae. Sorry. So this family includes those alphocinos and nannygace. They are found in tropical to temperate waters around the world between 10 and 1,300 meters. Typically that red in color, and they can get up to 3 feet in length, so they can get quite large. The picture I have probably doesn't do justice to how big they can get. Their key features include spiny scales, large eyes, and big mouths. Pretty consistent with a lot of the other deep sea fish that we have talked. And then that will lead us into our next family. I'll just keep on rolling since that was a smaller one. That is the family Melamphidae. Oh, you got one up. Sweet. Say I had one ready, but you beat me to it. These are known as the ridgeheads or big scales. They are found worldwide except for the polar waters and the Mediterranean, which is kind of strange.
Yeah, I don't know if that's like due to a nutrient content or it's just not deep enough for them.
I don't know. That's interesting. While they're one of the most widespread and abundant deep sea groups of fish, they really don't have any commercial value. They're named after the big scales that they have on their body, which you can kind of see in the picture that Tyler pulled up. And they have those pronounced cranial ridges, so off the top of their heads, it's kind of bumpy. They are pretty robust and slightly compressed laterally, which is like left to right.
They're squished.
Yeah, squished. They, as their name suggests, their head is large and scaleless and is typically either blunt and round or very sharply angled. And they do have a large mouth, again, consistent with a lot of other deep sea fish, lined with villiform teeth. Tyler, what is villiform?
So villiform teeth would be kind of like the plate, like the teeth plates.
Okay.
It's almost like a catfish, like sandpaper plate.
Okay. That makes sense.
So that'll take us into our next group. Stephanobaridae. These guys are known as the pricklefish. They are found in the tropical and subtropical waters of the Atlantic and Pacific. They live below 1,000 meters down to about 5,000 meters. They're known to eat crabs, which leads researchers to believe that they are a benthic species, which means they live along the seafloor. And Alex put up a drawing, as these guys are deep sea fish, oftentimes nocturnal. We don't exactly have any live specimens and any collections to really have photographs of. So next would be the Hispidobarax, which is known as the bristleskin, and it's the lone member of its species. It's the lone member of its genus, my bad. It can be found at depths of 560 to 1,000 meters. And they grow about 7.1 inches. And Alex put up an image, that bright red, which is common of most species we've talked about so far. And I'm not sure why it's called the bristleskin, but it does have kind of like...
I think probably off of those, off the fins, the way those rays are, it's very bristly, kind of like a stiff brush kind of look to it.
Yeah, I'd say so too. And it doesn't look like the rays have much of a webbing between them.
No, there's not a whole lot of
fins.
Tissue connecting them. That'll take us then into our next family, Baryces, known as the gibberfishes. There are 2 species. They are found within the tropical Atlantic, Indian, and Pacific at depths of 400 to about 1,000 meters. So another deeper sea fish. They stay much shorter with a maximum length of only 4.7 inches. They are not very large. That is terrifying.
It's a deep sea fish. What do you expect?
True. That is kind of freaky looking. Tyler's pulled up what looks like a very fancy drawing.
I think it's a picture. I think it's a top-down image.
If that is a top-down image, I am concerned. They go the other direction for deep sea fishes, where they are more transparent than they are of a very dark, hard to see color in the depths of the ocean.
Yeah.
Again, large mouths, large eyes, consistent with our deep sea fish friends, or just a deep sea fish. I don't know if you want to be friends with that one.
No, I don't. I'm good.
It's quite freaky. That'll take us in our next family. The words are difficult. Rondelletidae. There we go. I was getting there. I was working on it. These are the red-mouth whalefish. Don't let the name fool you, because these are small fish, only reaching about 3 inches in size. Little oxymoron there for you. There are only 2 species in this family. They're most common in the Atlantic, but they can be found in the Pacific Ocean as well. Found in deep waters of tropical and temperate regions, all the way down to 3,000 meters. But they do make nightly vertical migrations up to the shallow water to feed. That is
also
disgusting.
It looks like a liver.
It does look like someone took a liver and slapped a mouth and fishtail on it. That is horrendous. For the viewers who are seeing this, you understand. For the listeners, look it up or don't. They're kind of gross looking.
It's a deep, like, vestigial red.
Yes, like a very dark, I can't even call that blood red. I mean, it's like cranberry juice red. Well, that's enough of these guys. Tyler, if you want to take it to our next group, who's probably just as terrifying.
I've seen them before, and they are disgusting looking as well. These guys are the velvet whalefish, found worldwide, but most common in the Pacific near Japan and New Zealand. Their body is whale-shaped with small pectoral and pelvic fins, and the dorsal and anal fins are set further back. That's where it gets the name whalefish, because that is a similar body plan to like the baleen whales, where the dorsal fin is set way in the back, and the pectoral fins are relatively small in comparison to the rest of the body. They are that vivid red in color, as you can see in Alex's image, and they are believed to feed on crustaceans.
Ah, fancy.
They're just gross.
That is kind of, that is another, I would call that a blood red. That is very vibrant red color, which you would think
It's a Swedish fish.
Basically, it's that right color. For the folks at home, why would the fish be such a bright red? When you start getting into those low light conditions, red is an incredibly difficult color to see. And a lot of these fish are colorblind, so it really doesn't matter because they don't get enough light for it to matter.
Yes.
They primarily have just the rod cells in their eyes, which is what the cells that pick up light. So they don't care as much about the colors. And like I said, reds, and then of course blacks and browns are the most difficult colors, some of the most difficult colors to see when it's almost nearly pitch black. But that will take us to our last family for today, and that is the family Cetomymidae. These are small deep sea fish.
Oops.
There you go. More whale fishes.
Yeah.
So these are some of the most deep sea living fish, exceeding 3,500 meters. They are known as the flabby whalefish or big nose fish, as you can kind of see from the image that Tyler pulled up. They're either the females are quite round and chunky, and they basically looks like all nose in the front, and the males are just a big old nose, and they look more.
Yeah. So the females are known as the flabby whalefish, and the males are the big nose fish. And the larvae are known as something completely different. And I
don't think it is on here. So they exhibit
tape
a very
tails.
Where are they?
Tape tails.
Tape tails.
Tape tails.
Interesting. So as you can see from the image, they exhibit an extreme sexual dimorphism, which is something that with at the males, once they've matured, they do not eat. The mouth actually fuses shut. And the females have well-developed lateral lines that you can actually see in the image. Almost looks like is a clear line on the body and almost looks kind of sparkly, like they have some photophores on it. I can't quite tell.
I can't make it out from here.
That's pretty cool. They do have a global distribution throughout the southern hemisphere, so south of the equator. You can find them pretty much worldwide. Or I guess I should say throughout the southern hemisphere, not worldwide. And all of them, their fins lack spines and they lack pelvic fins, and swim bladders, so they probably do not really do much vertical migrating.
No.
Or if they do, they've got to work for it.
Yes.
That will wrap us up for our lesson today. This was our last family for today's lesson with the Polymixiforms and Baryceforms.
And just to give you guys a quick rundown of the remainder of fish, we have 4 total episodes of fish, 3 for teleosts, and 1 for the lobe-finned fish. And then we'll be done.
So we are rapidly approaching the end of the fish.
And for us, it's a lot more rapid than it is for you guys, because fourth wall break, we've been pumping out like 2 episodes a week, and I've just been scheduling them every week. So we're almost 3 episodes ahead of like schedule.
Yeah, it's crazy. We're really making them happen for you guys. After a couple weeks of missing them and being off because life happens sometimes, we're really trying to stay on top of it.
Yeah, life is an adult point right now, so we figured we'd pump out as much as we can.
Yeah.
But that'll bring us to our recurring segments for the week. First up is our amazing species, as always. Today we're talking Centrobarix affinis, also known as the red snapper in some regions.
You got one already? What a guy.
So, it's also known as the redfish. So, depending on where you're at, location-wise, it has different names. These guys are found in Neritic to benthic regions in the Pacific Ocean, off like the eastern coast of Australia, New Zealand, and some of those
Polynesian islands.
Yeah, the Polynesian islands. All throughout Oceania. They are vulnerable. Assessed as vulnerable by the IUCN. and that happened last year in April. So,
Very recent study.
yes, for once we have a pretty relatively recent study. The studies gave that it was a long-lived schooling species, particularly vulnerable to fishing. Generation time is 16.7 years, and 3 generations are about 50 years. It is targeted by fisheries and has been overfished with a 95% decline in spawning biomass since the mid 1970s or over the past 3 generations.
That's a lot in a very short amount of time comparatively.
Yeah, the Australian fisheries stock is managed with fishing regulations, and a stock rebuilding plan is in place, although recruitment has been low since the early 2000s. With no available information on stock size in other regions, and based on assumption that the Australian population represents 30 to 50% of the total population, that's about a 45% decline. And since it is caught in other areas, it's assumed that there is biomass depletion in those areas, most notably New Zealand, and the global decline may be greater than 45%.
Yeah, and it looks like they've contributed to over 50% of the total bycatch from trawling fishing at the 100 to 200 meter depth. That 50% of that total catch that was discarded is this species of fish. So it is something. The other that's a big problem is that it winds up as a lot of bycatch to those commercial fisheries, which in a lot of cases, if they survive, they are not doing well because it is they get pulled up out of the depths, and it typically does a lot of damage to the swim bladder.
Yeah, other things that have impacted availability, we'll say, is climate change. More due to the water temperature changing, kind of shrinks its range, so it's not as comfortable in some of those higher temperatures. So as the water temperatures rise, it shrinks its comfortable range, which then increases overfishing because they're moving to other areas and you're overfishing in the same areas.
Yeah.
But it is a national and international food fish, although over 50% of the total catch that was discarded by fisheries in 2002, that's a hard one to read.
Yeah, I said that.
Yes.
Yeah, that this species was over 50% of the total catch that was discarded
That's the
by
better way to read it.
that
Good job.
fishery. Yeah. So these were individuals under 20 centimeters of fork length, which means where the base of the fork of the tail fin, they had to be, I think, over 20 centimeters to keep. So a lot of these fish were under 20 centimeters and they were thrown back. Good, bad, or indifferent.
But in terms of conservation, the species is managed specifically by Australia's Fishery Management Authority, part of the southern and eastern scalefish and shark fishery. It has a total allowable catch limit, so that would be overall, as a general population, Australia is not allowed to catch a certain number above a certain number of these guys.
And that also includes like incidental, like like if you catch it on
Bycatch.
accident, like bycatch and trawling nets, that includes that as well. Because like I said, a lot of those fish that get caught up in those trawling nets do not often survive.
New Zealand also has a total of allowable catch limit, and we're still trying to do research on, populations and fisheries outside of those two areas. It's kind of hard in some of the smaller countries in Oceania, like those Polynesian islands and stuff like that. I just want to click it over to you for our most wanted.
Yes, sir. Our most wanted for this week, another fish. I'm taking us back to the Cypriniforms. The fish that I'm looking at today is the red shiner Cyprinella lutrensis. So this is also known as the rainbow dance or red horse minnow. It is a small freshwater minnow in the Cyprinidae family. Let me pull up a picture for you. You can see over there struggling to find one.
Me?
Yeah.
I was really just getting back to our note page off of my IUCN page.
Well, I'm talking crap without needing to. So it is naturally found in the central and western Mississippi River Basin and the drainages of the Gulf of Mexico, west to the Rio Grande River. It is a native of the United States. It has as you can see in the image, it has a very bright, shimmery silver color to its scales, but it also has very bright orange, red fins and gill plate as well, giving it the red shiner name. It was because of that, it was a favored fish in the aquarium trade, as well as a very flashy bait fish in the aquarium trade. That's where it gets the rainbow dace name. The problem is outside of its native habitat, in areas such as the province of Ontario in Canada, it is a prohibited species under the Invasive Species Act because they are generalists, which means they can pretty much survive anywhere that is fresh water, including low water quality areas.
I mean, it's a sapiniform. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Most sapiniforms are generalists. Think of a lot of the carp species that we've talked about as being invasive also
Yes.
fit inside sapiniforms.
Yeah, and they are very aggressive and territorial, which then threatens native bait fish for food and resources. As it also eats the eggs of a lot of different native fish in those areas where it is not native. Even so, even big like predatory fish are impacted because it eats the eggs. It does also eat algae and plankton, which is pretty standard for a fish of this size, only growing about 4.5 to 9 centimeters total. But because because of how voracious their appetites are, and those algae and plankton being important to helping filter and generate oxygen in water, they can actually make water qualities worse if there are large invasive populations, and then introduces new diseases and pathogens and helps to contribute to toxic algae blooms because it takes out some of the other algae and plankton that kind of would keep them from getting too out of hand. But like I said, they are on the invasive species list in Canada and other nations around the world to prevent them from escaping into the wild. I believe they are now illegal to use in bait fish outside of their native range. At the very least, like I said, in Canada, that's where the article I found about these guys is from. That is all I have on them. Like I said, like a lot of those other minnows and things we've talked about, they can pretty much get in there. They spawn quickly. And being small fish, they have to be quite aggressive for their size to make it in their new home. So that is all I have for the red shiner today, which will thus take us into our final segment for today is our ecology encyclopedia. Now this one's going to be a bit of a doozy, like last week wasn't.
I don't remember what last
so
week was. What was last week?
Last week was
trophic
cascades.
Yes.
So this week we wanted to talk a little bit about natural disasters and kind of the whole impact surrounding that.
Yes. For reference, in the U.S., it is late August, early September, so we are reaching
right in the
hurricane season.
In the heart of hurricane season. We just had Hurricane Aaron make its way up the coast with, I believe, more forming behind it. So I figured it was a good time of year, as well as we had some significant wildfires. And I believe there was an earthquake in Russia not too long ago as well. Those are not as significant as more of the above ground natural disasters. But hurricanes especially, I think, are one of the ones that are the most difficult for, I shouldn't say for plants to adapt to, because there are actually some that are like those tropical plants that are in hurricane prone areas that have adapted to them, such as like the palm tree, because they are very flexible. They're able to withstand a lot of the wind. Now, of course, there is a point where it becomes too much. This falls under a little bit of climate change as the oceans warm and the climate warms in general. It is easier for these storms to collect that warm, moist air off of the water and makes them bigger, faster. So we're seeing more severe storms that are lasting longer, covering bigger areas, doing more damage. And we talked a little bit with, as far as in this wheel, I'm kind of running off of using that a little bit. So those natural resources, we did talk about that with like wetlands and riparian zones. That'd be like those stream buffers and the natural land cover, large tree, a variety of different plants. These can actually help mitigate some of those issues. Like we talked about some of the flooding, the storm surge along the coast, kind of controlling, especially in the event of like a hurricane, controlling the just sheer volume of water that is dumped onto the land from those storms, keeping it from becoming a flooding event. It helps slow it down, spread it out, mitigate that problem. As we talked about along the bottom, those drivers of change, stuff that we have talked about quite often. Climate, I already touched on. Land management is we're removing the wetlands, removing those stream buffers, we basically took out the water breaks and sponges. The wetlands were just giant sponges for all this water, and we took it all out, which is then causing those flooding events to be more severe. Same with the hydrologic alteration. Putting in the dams is good until the dam breaks, or it's just too much water for even the dam to slow down. It causes that flooding. Invasive species are another issue with that because they get, especially things like insects or diseases that cause injury or even kill like native plants that would live along those stream banks, that would help keep that under control.
There's also a lot of, motion that takes place in these hurricanes.
Yes.
So, you could have a relatively centralized invasive species outbreak, but if a hurricane comes through, that wind goes everywhere and it could push a population 50 miles northward or whatever, and then it's just a whole new outbreak.
Yeah. And then, of course, the part with all of the more human aspects, the loss as far as economic, safety, public health, is all stuff that is looked at because we are part of nature and we are subject to Mother Nature's laws, whether we like to or not. And these events can cause significant public crises because it can wipe out whole towns, cities. People are left without clean food and water or shelter. If you get one storm and then there's another one right behind it, you have nowhere safe to go. It makes it that much worse. Now, on the other side, some of these natural disasters, especially with larger scale ones such as wildfires and hurricanes, that they are big drivers of succession. And we talked about a little while ago now where kind of helps reset an environment and give a chance for native species to come back. And those early successional species allows for more biodiversity in a lot of cases. Because
there's also some species, not necessarily with hurricanes, but with wildfires more, who need a wildfire too.
Yes, and especially in fire-prone areas such as the western United States, there is the lodgepole pine is the one that I always remember from school, where it has a very thick, waxy layer on the pine cones, and it actually needs the heat from the fire to melt the wax to open the cones, allowing the pines to successfully reproduce. So in some areas, the vegetation has adapted to the point where it actually needs fire, not just is resistant to it, which is kind of cool. But I just wanted to cover a little bit like some natural disasters, why they're not always a bad thing. In the sense of hurricanes, depending on the direction they go, they could actually bring rain to very dry areas if they go the right way. So it's not always a bad thing, but they are significantly impacted by things such as climate change, or in the case of wildfires, poor management, like land management, or just poor, or I don't want to say poor care, like not caring for the environment. People just being irresponsible.
That's a good word.
Is a good word to put for it. But Tyler, do you have anything else to add to this? I kind of
No, not on
ran
today's
my course.
ecology encyclopedia. You did a good job on explaining. But that'll take us to the end of the episode. As always, make sure to follow us on whatever platform you listen to the podcast, whether it's Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, YouTube. Make sure to subscribe, comment on the videos, things that you liked, what you want to hear from us, and make sure to like it on the platforms that you can. Also, make sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok for short form clips and amazing species, as well as the Facebook page at Life the Complete Story for extra news articles that we find interesting. Send us an email at lifecompletstory@gmail.com for video ideas, things that may not fit in a comment. But as always, Alex, how do we
keep on learning and learn something new? You never know what you find interesting. But I've been Alex, and that's been Tyler. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Life the Complete Story, and we will see you next time.